The UN voted at the end of November 1947 to partition Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab. The Jews got the best of it. More than half the country, even though they owned around 10% of the land, and there were twice as many Arabs. The Palestinian Arab leadership rejected the plan straight away. This was not going to be settled by diplomacy.
In Palestine, the Jews celebrated. Since the 1930s at least, David Ben-Gurion had believed that getting a state was the first priority. But he knew they were going to have to fight for it.
At that time, the Jewish population accepted it. And at the night of 29th of November, we all danced in the streets. And we were still dancing when the first news came that some people were killed on the roads.
We were shocked by the thing, to see that the country was going to be vivisected.
There had been violence between Jews and Arabs before the partition plan, but it escalated fast after the vote. Within a week there was a civil war. The British, counting the days until they could leave, were stuck in the middle. The Jewish underground army was rapidly coming out into the open. They had clandestine arms factories, but they were still short of weapons. Their biggest advantage over the Palestinians was a leadership that had spent years preparing for this moment.
We were better organized because Ben-Gurion, with a very far-sighted look, he knew that we are going to come to a conflict. And the Haganah, that was the underground forces of Israel, were organizing in such a way that they would become an army eventually.
The main Palestinian leader, Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Mufti of Jerusalem, lived in exile in Egypt. During the Second World War, he was in Berlin supporting the Nazis. The Mufti controlled the biggest Palestinian militia. Other Arab leaders saw him as a rival, not as an ally. He appointed his cousin, Abdul Qadir al-Husseini, to lead his militia, which called the Holy War Army.
In the minds of people, he was a hero, and he deserved to be a hero. He was a top-level fighter, courageous, brave, and sincere, loyal.
Husseini led a few thousand guerrilla fighters. With the help of men from local Arab villages, they cut the main Jewish supply route from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the city they all wanted.
This was the biggest prize of all, Jerusalem, a city holy to Christians, Jews and Muslims, and which had a central part in the dreams of both sides in the war. When the fighting started, neither could imagine a future that didn't include being in charge of this place.
In the partition plan, Jerusalem was supposed to be under international control. Neither Arabs nor Jews wanted that. So, once again, in its bloody history, the Holy City was at war.
Jerusalem was under siege, and the Jewish community in Jerusalem was completely cut off, and there was not enough water, not enough food, and not enough ammunition, not enough soldiers in Jerusalem. And we used to have convoys going from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, carrying wheat and water and food and ammunition and so forth.
From February 1948, the attacks on the convoys from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem intensified. Arabs controlled the hills overlooking the route. The Haganah constructed improvised armored cars, known as sandwiches, to protect themselves.
We fought our way to Jerusalem, fighting vehicle after vehicle, and convoys were almost suicidal operation. The situation was such that we didn't want to fall a knife in the hands of So when you drove an armored car with people inside, whatever, we used to have high explosives inside the truck. That if worse to come to worse, and you see that there is no hope, we preferred to die than to fall alive in their hands. This was a war without prisoners of war.
In March 1948, the Jews went on the offensive. Ben-Gurion and generals adopted Plan D. Its objectives are still the subject of great controversy.
Some historians say that Plan D was a blueprint for the ethnic cleansing of Arabs from Palestine. Others say it was simply a military plan for seizing strategic ground, and that there was no political scheme to drive the Arabs out of a future Jewish state.
The priority was opening road to Jerusalem. As the Arab militias didn't coordinate with each other, the Jewish forces were able to pick villages off one by one. The houses were usually blown up. If the residents hadn't already left, they were often expelled. On the 9th of April, a group of fighters from the Irgun and the Stern Gang, the two Jewish ultranationalist groups that the British regarded as terrorists, were moving towards a village nearby called Dir Yassin. The Haganah gave them fire support. Recent research suggests the attack killed around 120 Palestinian civilians.
In every house they entered, they killed the people inside. The Jabir family, for example, was killed. 8 of them. They were killed in the morning. They were still sleeping. They shot them and left.